If you're looking to manifest your husband, but not just any old dude, you want a provider, then this video is for you because I'm going to be talking about how I manifested my husband, who is a provider. In fact, he is so much of a provider that he basically retired me from my old business and said, go do whatever you want and go explore whatever you want because I want you in your feminine energy. So if that's the type of relationship that you want, stay tuned until the end because I'm going to be dropping some real juicy tidbits that I have learned over the years. Welcome to this channel. My name is Amanda Abella. On this channel, we help high achievers and high performers get whatever it is that they desire in life without all the extra stress, drama, and chaos that most people are accustomed to. In this case, this is for the high achieving women who are trying to find their provider husband and perhaps are having a difficult time in the dating market with this particular subject. So if that's you, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we have coming out on this channel. If you want to take some of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about in this video a step further, then you can find a link to all of our free resources, courses, programs, so on and so forth below this video. So let's get into it. First of all, what is a provider? What does that actually mean? Because I feel like there's a whole lot of confusion on the internet because I'm constantly going to my husband with videos about like, did you see this crazy stuff that people are doing in relationships? And he's like, well, maybe you should start talking about it on YouTube because this seems to light you up and you're pretty good at it. And so I was like, okay. So a lot of stuff that's going on online right now is very confusing to both men and women in terms of how to actually be in partnership with each other. And then when you start getting into the conversations about the femininity space and the energetics, and then you contrast that with the red pill stuff going on, I mean, it's just so crazy and so confusing out here. So my goal is to hopefully clear up some of that confusion because I've been studying this on the side for many years actually, and it's how I was able to manifest my husband, who is a provider. So one of the areas in which there's a lot of confusion is what is a provider, because a lot of people think that providing is only money, right? Like the dude just gives you money, the man just gives you money, the husband only gives you money. Money is a part of it, yes. Provider husbands, they don't want their wives to have to work. They don't want the mother of their children to have to work, and they are not asking their wives or the mother of their children to go 50-50. That is ridiculous. And provider husbands understand that that is a ridiculous notion because they understand that women, in bringing their femininity into the picture, bring so many assets to the relationship and to the household that are quite frankly intangible. And when provider husbands and masculine men get married, guess what? They tend to live longer and make more money. And masculine men understand this, and that's why they're not forcing their wives to go work, because they understand that what they bring to the relationship is going to make them more money, help them live longer, and it's so intangible, right? So a lot of times, and part of the confusion that happens is that a lot of women, especially in the West, because this is how many of us were raised, we think that if it's going to be a fair relationship, then, you know, we have to pay half the bills. So when a dude, right, who's very clearly more in their feminine energy, if they're even asking you this question, are like, hey, let's go 50-50 in relationships, a lot of women don't question it because they think that's what's fair, not realizing that provider men would never ask that question because they understand it's not necessarily about being fair. It's that both parties bring totally different assets to the relationship. And in the case of a provider masculine man, one of those assets is money. And he ain't going to be asking for it from you, right? So the next thing to keep in mind when it comes to providing is that it's not just about money, right? Money is a part of it because that's a part of helping a woman feel safe and secure. And when a woman feels safe and secure, then she is more likely to be in her feminine, and it's a lot easier for her to be in her feminine when she is safe and when she feels safety and security. It's how we're wired. It is what it is. But there's other parts of it too. And I posted this one time on Facebook a couple years ago because I had one of those moments where I just had a thought and there was no filter from my brain to my mouth. And I said this post and I said, if you're with a man and he is not helping you solve problems, he is going to become your problem. So one aspect of being a provider is actually solving problems and coming up with solutions. So I will use my husband as an example. My husband solves problems before I even know they exist, okay? A lot of times I don't know that something is broken in the house and he's already fixed it. If I come to him with a tech issue or a business issue or anything like that, he's already solving the problem. Like I said, I oftentimes don't even know that the problems exist or even existed or even happened because he already solved it before I even realized there was an issue. Or for example, he saw me struggling with a coffee maker the other day. I was trying to make Cuban coffee like the old school way on the stove. And for some reason, the old school Italian percolators were like not working, and I went through like 3 of them. So what did he do? He bought me an espresso maker because he saw me struggling with the Italian percolator. I don't know why it's not working here. We think it's like the elevation or something like that, but those Italian percolators are just not working in Guadalajara, Mexico on the stove. And he saw me struggling and he bought me an espresso maker so that I wouldn't struggle anymore. Or he saw that I broke a blender, a few months ago, and he bought me a new blender so that I could make my morning smoothies before we go to the gym. So masculine men and provider men, part of what they bring is solving problems. Men love to solve problems. If they are not solving problems for you, they're either a very effeminate man, especially if they're bringing problems to you, they're a very effeminate man, or they're just not that into you. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And then of course, another aspect is safety. Are they're protectors, right? Are they protecting you? Do they want to protect you? Do they want to make sure that you're safe? My husband's very good at this too. I'm just going to keep using him as an example. He made sure that, my health insurance was covered. I remember when he first came to see me in Miami, because we were long distance first, he wouldn't even let me walk like 10 minutes by myself at night. And the problem that we're having, and a lot of the confusion that we're having, is that a lot of women are confused because they think that a lot of these behaviors are either not fair, right? Like for example, the money or the provision when it comes to money, it's not fair. Or it's not fair that the men have to deal with so much more. But that's how we're wired, and that's how it's always been, and that's actually what makes masculine men feel really good, and that's what has feminine women feel really good, and that's why there's polarity in the relationship. Or the other area where there's confusion is a lot of women's worthiness stuff will start coming up. And I'm guilty of this. I think every woman is guilty of this, where you're like, whoa, wait a second, hold on, you're doing that much for me. I feel like I need to give something back. That again is just conditioning. You don't need to give something back because again, once women understand that what they bring to a relationship is totally intangible, right? And will multiply his efforts over time, then they don't no longer feel the need to give back, quote unquote, in that way. And again, masculine provider men also understand that. And then, or a lot of women will just feel like, for example, all these behaviors are very controlling. And yes, masculine provider men like to have control, but there is a difference between control and controlling, right? Control is, I want to have control of the environment and I want to make sure everyone is safe. That's control. Controlling is manipulating you. Their two are not the same. So yes, masculine men like to be in control because they like to control the environment because they want to make sure that all their loved ones are safe. And the only way for them to make sure that their loved ones are safe is through control. So that's a good thing. Controlling, is manipulating you. It's gaslighting you. It's holding things over your head. It's not giving you access to money. It's things like that, right? So the two are not the same, but because there's a lot of confusion in our culture about this stuff, a lot of women think that these behaviors are controlling when they don't realize that with a masculine man who's a provider, he's creating a container and a space for you to be able to flourish in your feminine, and that does require some level of healthy control. Okay, we've established what a provider man is. Now, how do you attract one of these into your life? Well, step one, you already did, which is learning what are the characteristics of a healthy man so that you know how to spot them. My husband, I remember when we had first started dating, and he was like, everybody online is talking about red flags in dating, but no one ever talks about green flags, right? Maybe you should this was 2 years ago. He was like, you should tell women what the green flags are in relationships. So now, because I explained what a provider man is, now you know what the green flags in relationships are, or at least the green flags from men, okay? You don't want men out here embarrassing you. You don't want men out here treating you like crap. You don't want men out here making you, work, raise kids, do the household stuff, and pay half the bills, because that's ridiculous. So you don't want any of that stuff happening. So in order to avoid those things, you have to understand what a healthy masculine man does. And you have to understand why women struggle with this, right? And why it's difficult for us to receive it, right? So I went into some of the reasons why it's difficult for us to receive. The other reason why it's difficult for us to receive it, and this is the behavior that us women have to change, is because we've been taught to be controlling. So what I find so ironic about the conversation is a lot of women who struggle with this are like, that's controlling behavior from a man. But in reality, they're so afraid of a man having control and surrendering to a man for lots of really good reasons that we probably don't have time to go into in this video, but I'm sure the reasons are good because I used to have really good reasons as well, and they were valid reasons. So I'm not knocking anybody for those reasons. We just have to learn how to overcome a lot of these things and overcome a lot of the issues and traumas and things that we've had in the past in order to get to a healthy place in relationship with a masculine man. But a lot of women have been taught that they have to be controlling in order to be safe. So the irony, right, is that those types of women, the ones who are controlling and have to be in control, don't like it when a man is in control, because they're the ones who actually want to be in control and controlling. And it's very masculine behavior. And to be honest, it's just mostly based on survival programming. I come from a family of very controlling women. And when I started looking into the lineage of why that was, it was so obvious that at least 3 generations back, it's survival programming because they had to survive. Because for one reason or another, I think it actually started with my great-grandmother. She became a widow with 7 kids. So of course she had to step up and survive. And then that led to, controlling daughters, which then led to controlling granddaughters. And then I am the 4th generation who's like, I'm breaking that. Could it have gone further back than my great-grandmother? Probably. I just don't know that much about the family history to go further back than that, but that is something that I traced back. So when women are controlling, oftentimes it's been because of survival and survival programming. And most of us, men included, have not been taught how to be in relationship or what a healthy relationship looks like. Back when I did a lot more business consulting, and now my husband does most of that, but back when I did more of that, we had a client who was probably top 1% marriage counselor and therapist in the United States. There's like a wait list to work with her, and she's excellent at what she does, and she mostly works with high achievers. And she said to us, nobody is taught how to be in relationship. Nobody is taught how men and women relate to each other. No one is taught communication skills. No one is taught how any of this stuff works. So there's like this giant mess out there, and usually it's multiple generations that haven't known how to do this, and it just gets passed down and passed down and passed down until one person decides that they're going to learn how to do this and they're going to learn how to do it well. Which brings me to a nuanced part of this conversation, because I feel like on the internet, and then we'll get into attracting specifically, on the internet, they make this very simplistic, right? So it's like women just want money and men just want sex, right? They make it very simplistic like that. And it's multidimensional, right? It's a lot more nuanced than that. And because a lot of people don't understand the nuance and the multidimension of it all, particularly women, they start looking for the 6 foot tall, six figures, he has to make more money than me. They start looking for all that stuff, right? And what happens is that the more particular they get, because they don't understand the nuance of these things, the smaller and smaller and smaller the pool gets. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't any trifling men out here who are very much in their feminine and act like women. That exists, and we want to avoid those guys. But there's also a lot of guys in the middle who just were not taught how to be in a relationship, or perhaps they did not have a strong male figure in their life to teach them. Or I know lots of guys like that who, for example, went into their marriages and perhaps they were more on the feminine pole just because they were confused. And they were confused because society tells everybody they need to be equal. So they thought that the woman wanted to be equal in terms of money. They were confused because perhaps they did not have strong male mentors in their lives, which is very common. In the United States, at least, unfortunately. So they were just confused. However, right, they were willing to learn and willing to change. And there's a huge difference between a man who just doesn't know but is willing to be a provider and willing to be healthy masculine and is learning how to do that versus because they just, again, were not exposed, just like women were not taught how to be feminine. Men have also not been taught how to be masculine, but the parties have to be willing to change. So the same way that women are willing to change, and there's a lot of women who are willing to change, there's a lot of men who are also willing to change, and then that'll widen the dating pool. And there's a reason why I say that, because women have a tendency of getting so hung up, right, on like the 1% of dudes that exist, that they don't realize that there's this whole other group of men who will more than happily provide for you. It's just they're confused the same way women are confused about what it means to be feminine. So the party just has to be willing to change and willing to do the things and actually change. And I know people who've done that. I know men who totally changed in the relationship once they really started learning about polarity and what healthy masculinity was and what healthy femininity was. The men changed, right? They went from asking their wives to do 50-50 to not making decisions, to not leading, to not being in control, to learning how to do those things in a healthy way. And their relationships and their marriages totally changed for the better once they learned how to do that. So there's a whole group of men out there who are just confused and don't know. And most men want to be healthy masculine providers. They are wired for it, right? The majority of men do want to do that. They just don't know how, and they are confused, just like how the majority of women want to be in more of a feminine pole, and with a masculine man, they're just confused about how to do it. So if you understand that nuance, and you understand, as long as you find somebody who's willing to do the work and willing to change and actually does it and is showing the steps in changing, that right there is going to vastly widen the dating pool of available masculine provider men, because there is a reality that we have to deal with, which is that most people have not been taught what a healthy relationship looks like. Most people have not been taught what polarity looks like, and we have to give people some grace for that. Okay, now let's go into the actual attraction part. Once you understand what a healthy provider masculine man looks like, so the green flags, once you understand that there's nuance to this, and there's just a lot of guys who are confused and don't know, but are willing to be providers and who are willing to change, just like you are willing to change if you are watching this video. Once you understand that, and once you understand where women drop the ball, where we might feel uncomfortable receiving from men, or where we might go into wanting to control the situation out of safety. And once we understand that we have a tendency of doing that and we can start changing it, now we can start into the actual attraction of it all. So number one, and this goes to the receiving piece, right? A lot of women really struggle with receiving from men. They struggle with receiving money because they feel like it needs to be equal, it needs to be 50-50. You need to throw all that equal stuff out the window, because We are equal, we just bring different things to the relationship, right? The masculine typically brings the tangible. Like I said, they bring money, they bring provision, they bring safety. That's what they bring, right? They bring problem solving. It's very tangible. And a lot of times what the women bring is more intangible. I will give an example. I'm currently decorating the house. My husband got the house to the point where everything functions the way that it needs to, and it's very utilitarian, right? It's very useful, and all the Alexas work, and the TVs are set up the right way, and the internet's good to go, and we have furniture. Great. Now it's up to me to decorate it. And I remember one time I was having a conversation with my husband, and I was like, you don't feel bad about wanting to be the provider and all that kind of stuff? Like, because sometimes I feel like I'm not contributing enough. Right? And then he looked at this like beautiful thing that I decorated, and he's like, well, you don't contribute enough. You made this absolutely beautiful. I would have no idea how to do that. So that would be an example of the intangible. And a lot of women need to understand that what they bring is actually intangible, right? It's beauty is an example of that, like I did with the house. Or when it comes to money, right? The masculine tends to actually represent money. The feminine tends to represent wealth. What is wealth? It's the multiplication of money. So the masculine makes the money, and a healthy provider masculine man knows that his wife's going to help him multiply the money if he keeps her happy. And she does that in lots of ways. She does that by, in some cases, I've seen couples literally where a lot of her money, right, whatever she makes is for savings and investments or for pleasure or for fun, while his money is for the provision and the living. It has to do with, and this is particularly if you're married to an ambitious man like I am, sometimes they have bad days at work and in business, and they deal with a lot of stuff. And it's being that peace for them. It's really being that peace for them when they are going through hardships in work and in business, because men do deal with a lot of hardships at work. I mean, back in the day, they were literally going to war. Now they just go to work, right? And if they're very ambitious, they're going to be dealing with problems all day long if they are ambitious men. So don't create more problems for your husband, and he's going to want to provide for you. So women have to learn these things. They have to learn what they bring to a relationship and realize that it's not necessarily about giving. A lot of times what the woman brings to the relationship is all about receiving. So one of the things that I did when I was ready to manifest my husband is I practiced receiving from all the masculinity around me. I practiced receiving from male family members. I practiced receiving from men on the street if they wanted to open a door for me. At the supermarket, for example, I practiced receiving from male colleagues. Like if they wanted to help me solve a problem, I would accept that. Or if they wanted to mentor me with something, that is something that I did. And in 4 months, I manifested my husband. Actually, through work is how I manifested my husband. So practice receiving. Another area is that we have to let go of control as women, because a lot of us, and again, I was raised by controlling women, have a tendency of wanting to be in control because we need to feel safe, and we haven't necessarily been taught or shown that you can be safe with the masculine. So it's one of those things where we have to practice not being in control when the masculine is around. Now, obviously, if you're in danger, obviously, if they're a super feminine man, obviously, you know, if you have to step in, right? Like if it's a dire situation, obviously leave, get out of there, do what it is that you have to do. But if it's not that, right? If your life is not in danger and it's not that, then practice leaning back and not being in control. So one way in which this could show up, and it's interesting because my husband and I have had this conversation where we've seen couples do this, where, for example, you know, the woman really wants the husband, for example, to be the provider and, you know, cover the bills, basically, because she's exhausted, and he's not doing that, right? In fact, he's usually very much in his feminine when that is going on. But what do the women do? The women keep working, keep solving the problem, keep paying the bills, keep solving the problem for the men, which just triggers the men to be lazier. It just does, right? Because men like to conserve energy. And I understand this very well because, again, I come from a line of controlling women, and I would see the men do this, right? Where they're like, what is the point in even trying if I can't even do it right? Or what is the point in taking the lead if they're not going to be okay with it? Or what is the point in doing any of this? I'm just going to conserve my energy and let her do the thing. So if you want to have a provider husband, an attractive provider husband, you have to learn to let them be in control, and you have to not solve their problems. So for example, if you want one to be a provider, you have to say, hey, I want to be work optional. I don't want to have to work. Okay? Especially if you're going to be having kids. I don't want to have to work. And a provider man will understand that, and he will agree with that. However, if there's some complaint or some issue, because there's a lot of confusion out here going on, and we're going to give people grace for that, lean back, right? Don't go solve the problem for him. Don't do it. Lean back. Let him go figure it out. He is capable of doing it. But the problem is that women are so controlling that they will step in to solve the problem rather than giving a masculine man the opportunity to solve the problem for her. So we have to look at these behaviors of where we are shooting ourselves in the foot if we want a masculine provider man. And then finally, at least for this video, otherwise it's going to be an hour long, what you want to do is you actually want to communicate these things when you're in the dating stage. It always blows my mind when women are trying to like manipulate a guy into liking them, and they may want to get married, but they're like, don't say that too soon. My husband knew I wanted to get married before we were even dating. So you have to be upfront with what it is that you want. Otherwise, you end up totally wasting your time. So if you want a man to be a provider, you have to be honest with that stuff up front. If you want to get married, right, and you're looking for a husband and you're looking for a marriage, you need to be honest about that stuff up front. None of this playing game stuff about manipulating, about you not saying those things too soon. The sooner the better, honestly, because then you just don't waste your time. I saw a relationship coach that I'm connected to on Facebook. She posted this the other day. It blew my freaking mind, where she was having a lot of clients where, they've been living together with a guy for 5 years, and they're just now coming to the conclusion that the guy does not want to be a provider and that he does not want to get married or have children. And the woman's wasted 5 years of her life just because she wasn't upfront about that stuff before. Now, it boggles my mind how you could get to 5 years and not know this information about your partner, but apparently it happens. And it happens because women are manipulating the situation to try and get a result, and then it just backfires in their face. Now, of course, there are ways to express your needs and your desires in a more feminine way, because there's a fine line between your birthright and knowing what your birthright is as a woman and sounding like an entitled person who's actually never going to get this because you're actually demanding it and you're being controlling. There's a fine line. I could do other videos on that if you want me to. Let me know in the comments below. But ultimately, this was about a video about understanding the energy dynamics between, men and women, because a lot of women out here are saying that they want provider men. You're telling me in my comments that you want more about this subject after reading the How I Manifested My Husband or watching the How I Manifested My Husband video. So here you have it. It's about really understanding these energies and what they look like and how they flow together. So I hope this was helpful. I can do other videos on this if you want me to. Let me know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single video we have coming out on this channel. And if you want more information about how to work with me as a coach in your business, we have courses, manifesting, all kinds of things. You can find the information for that below. We will have more stuff coming out on energetics, so make sure to look at that below. You can also sign up for our email list by signing up for our free manifestation guide, and then that way you'll know when we have new stuff coming out. So I hope this was helpful for those of you who have been asking me. I hope this gave you a lot more clarity for those of you who've been asking me, and I will catch you guys on the next one.